The galaxy was old. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had watched stars burn out and new ones take their place. But in all its long history, there was one story that every species knew. It was the story of the Terrans. No one knew where the story came from. Some said it was ancient, passed down from the first species to travel between stars. Others said it was just a tale made up to scare children, but everyone knew it. The story spoke of a world at the edge of the galaxy, a dangerous world that orbited a violent yellow star. This world had crushing gravity, burning radiation, and an atmosphere filled with a gas that could make fire. The creatures that lived there had to fight every day just to survive. They could heal from wounds that would kill anyone else. They could keep fighting long after they should have stopped, and they never, ever gave up. They were called the Terrans, and they were the most terrifying thing in the universe. Admiral Aura had heard these stories her whole life. She was a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. Her people had been part of the Accord for 1,000 years. The Accord was a group of 37 species that had agreed to live in peace and help each other. It was the greatest alliance in the galaxy. But Aura did not believe in fairy tales. She had real problems to deal with. The swarm had come. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They were a species of living ships, creatures that flew through space and ate everything in their path. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. In the past year, they had destroyed 17 star systems. Billions of lives had been lost. The Accord's fleets had fought back, but they were losing. Every battle cost them ships they could not replace. Every retreat gave the swarm more territory to devour. Aura stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Light. She looked at the star map in front of her. Red dots showed where the swarm had been. There were so many red dots now. Her second-in-command, a small furry creature named, walked up to her. "Admiral, we have received word from the Council. They want us to fall back to." Was a sacred world. It was where the Accord had been founded. Millions of civilians had already fled there, hoping the combined fleets could protect them. "And if we cannot hold?" Aura asked. Did not answer. They both knew what would happen. If fell, the Accord would die. Everything they had built would be consumed by the swarm. "I wish the old stories were true," said quietly. "I wish the Terrans would come and save us." Aura shook her head. "We cannot hope for myths to save us. We must save ourselves." But she could not help thinking about those stories. What if they were true? What if there really was a species out there that never gave up? A species that would fight against any odds? She pushed the thought away. It was foolish. There were no Terrans. There was only the swarm, and it was coming for them all. Far away, on a small blue world called Earth, Commander Jack stood in a large room. The room was deep underground, hidden from the rest of the world. Only a few hundred people knew it existed. This was the command center of the United Earth Defense Force. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. They had watched the stars. They had built ships in secret. They had trained soldiers and developed weapons. And they had waited. Jack was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his whole life getting ready for the day when humanity would finally meet other species. He had always hoped it would be peaceful. He had hoped wrong. The screens in front of him showed the signal they had received. It had come from deep space, broadcast on every frequency. Someone was screaming for help. Lieutenant Kate stood next to him. She was younger than Jack, with short brown hair and sharp eyes. She had been his partner for 10 years. Together, they had built the Defense Force into something real, something powerful. "The translation software has finished," Kate said. "Do you want to hear it?" Jack nodded. A voice filled the room. It was strange and alien, but the words were clear. "To any who can hear this message, we beg you. The swarm comes for us. Our fleets are broken. Our worlds are dying. If anyone is out there, if the legends are true, please help us. We cannot survive alone." The message repeated, Over and over the same desperate plea. Jack felt something stir in his chest. It was a feeling he knew well. It was the same feeling he got whenever he saw someone in trouble. The same feeling that had made him join the military all those years ago. "How many ships do we have ready?" he asked. Kate checked her tablet. 47 warships, 12 carriers, full crew on all of them. "And the council, what do they say?" Kate smiled. "They say it's your call, Commander. Whatever you decide, they will support." Jack looked at the screens again. He saw the star map. He saw how far away the signal had come from. He saw how dangerous this mission would be. But he also saw something else. He saw people who needed help, people who were dying while he stood here thinking. He had spent 50 years hiding, 50 years building in secret, 50 years wondering if humanity was ready to face the galaxy. It was time to find out. "Get me a channel to all ships," Jack said. "Tell them to prepare for launch. We leave in 6 hours." Kate nodded and started giving orders. The room came alive with activity. People ran to their stations. Screens lit up with data. The machine that humanity had built in secret was finally waking up. Jack walked to the main display. He looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. They had called for help, not knowing if anyone would answer. Jack took a deep breath. "We're coming," he said quietly. "Hold on just a little longer, we're coming." In the old stories, the Terrans were monsters. They were creatures from nightmares, dangerous and unstoppable. The galaxy had told these tales for centuries, never knowing if they were true. They were about to find out. And they would learn that the stories had gotten one thing wrong. The Terrans were not monsters. They were something far more dangerous. They were humans, and humans always showed up to fight. The sky above was filled with ships. Every species in the Accord had sent whatever they had left. Old warships that should have been retired. Transport vessels with weapons bolted onto their sides. Anything that could fly and fight had come to make a last stand. Admiral Aura stood on the bridge of the Eternal Light and counted the ships. 3,217. It sounded like a lot, but she knew it was not enough. The swarm would come with millions. Her crew worked in silence. They all knew what was coming. They had seen what the swarm did to other worlds. They had watched planets burn and species disappear forever. Now it was their turn to face that horror. Admiral said, "The civilian ships have almost finished evacuating. Another 6 hours and everyone will be away." "And how long until the swarm arrives?" Checked his screen. His small face went pale. 4 hours. So that was it. They would fight. They would die. And maybe, if they were lucky, some of the civilian ships would escape. Aura looked at her crew. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes, but they were also determined. They would not run. They would stand and fight for their people, even knowing they could not win. She was proud of them. "All ships, this is Admiral Aura," she said into the communication system. "Today we face the greatest enemy our civilization has ever known. Many of us will not survive, but our sacrifice will mean something. Every minute we fight is another minute for our families to escape. Every ship we destroy is one less ship hunting our children. We are the last wall between the darkness and everything we love. Let us make that wall strong." Across the fleet, soldiers and pilots heard her words. They gripped their weapons. They said silent prayers to whatever gods they believed in, and they prepared to die. The first swarm ships appeared 2 hours later. They came out of hyperspace like a cloud of insects, so many that the sensors could not count them all. The living ships were ugly things, covered in spines and teeth. They did not fly so much as crawl through space, their bodies pulsing with terrible life. Aura felt her heart sink. There were too many, far too many. "All ships open fire," she ordered. The battle began. For the first hour, the Accord fleet fought well. They destroyed thousands of swarm ships, but thousands more took their place. The living ships kept coming, endless and hungry. One by one, Accord vessels began to fall. The eternal light shook as enemy fire hit its shields. Aura grabbed her chair to keep from falling. Damage report. Shields at 40%, an officer called out. We have breaches on decks 7 through 12. They were dying. Slowly but surely they were dying. Then something strange happened. Every sensor on every ship in the fleet started screaming. Warning lights flashed. Alarms rang. The tactical display showed something that should have been impossible. A hole was opening in space itself. It was not like hyperspace. Hyperspace was gentle, a sliding between dimensions. This was violent. This was something tearing through reality with brute force. Energy poured out of the hole, more energy than any of them had ever seen. And then the ships came through. Aura stared at her screen. She did not understand what she was seeing. The ships were huge, far bigger than anything in the Accord fleet. They were made of metal, sharp and angular, with weapons that glowed with barely contained power. They flew in perfect formation, moving like a single creature with many bodies. There were 47 of them, only 47. It seemed like nothing against the millions of swarm ships. But something about them made Aura's blood run cold. These ships felt dangerous in a way she could not explain. They felt like predators. A message came through on all frequencies. A voice, speaking in a language none of them knew. But then it repeated, this time in the common tongue of the Accord. This is Commander Ben Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. We are here to help. The bridge went silent. Aura's 4 hands started to shake. Earth Terra, the death world from the old stories. The Terrans were real. On the bridge of the carrier Endurance, Commander Torres watched the battle unfold. He was a calm man with dark eyes and a quiet voice. Nothing seemed to surprise him. Nothing seemed to scare him. Captain Lisa Vance stood at his side. She was looking at the tactical display, counting enemy ships. That's a lot of bugs, sir. Yes, it is, Torres agreed. Orders. Torres smiled. It was not a nice smile. Kill them all. The human fleet moved. They flew straight at the swarm, their weapons charging with energy that made the very stars seem dim. The first shots were fired. And then the swarm learned what it meant to fight humans. The human weapons cut through swarm ships like they were made of paper. Massive cannons fired beams of pure destruction that killed 100 enemies with each shot. Smaller guns sprayed death in all directions, filling space with fire. Missiles flew out by the thousands, each one smart enough to find its own target. In 15 minutes, the humans destroyed more swarm ships than the Accord had killed in the entire battle. Aura watched in shock. Her translator was still working, feeding her the communications between the human ships. She heard their voices. They were not afraid. They were not desperate. They were calm, professional, even joking with each other as they fought. Got 3 on my tail, one pilot said. Little help. I see them, hold still, got them. Thanks, you're buying dinner. You always say that, you never pay. They were laughing. In the middle of the deadliest battle in galactic history, the humans were laughing. The swarm tried to adapt. They sent their biggest ships at the humans. They tried to surround them, to overwhelm them with numbers. Nothing worked. The human fleet moved like dancers, always in the right place at the right time. They seemed to know what the swarm would do before it did it. Commander Torres watched the battle with careful eyes. They're testing us, he said, trying to find weaknesses. Are they finding any? Vance asked. No. The battle raged for 4 more hours. By the end, the swarm had lost nearly a third of its fleet. The humans had lost 3 ships. As the swarm began to retreat, pulling back into hyperspace, a message came through from the eternal light. It was Admiral Aura. Terran Commander, I do not know how to thank you. We thought you were a myth, a story told to frighten children, but you came, you saved us. Torres considered his words carefully. We heard your call for help, that's all we needed. Our species has a saying, Admiral, No one gets left behind." There was a long silence. When Aura spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. "Who are you? What are you?" Tors looked out the viewport at the alien ships they had just saved. At the world behind them, filled with people who would live because humanity had come. "We're humans," he said simply, "and we're here to fight." The weeks after the battle were strange for everyone. The Accord had been saved, at least for now, but they did not know what to make of their saviors. The Terrans were real. The Death World species from the old stories actually existed, and they were nothing like anyone had expected. Admiral Aura spent much of her time with Commander Tors trying to understand these strange beings. They looked so fragile. They had only 2 arms, only 2 eyes. Their skin was soft. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons of any kind. Yet they had crushed the swarm with almost casual ease. How was that possible? She found part of her answer in the medical bay of the Endurance. Dr. Sophie Grant was the chief medical officer of the human flagship. She was a small woman with gentle hands and kind eyes. When the battle ended, she had opened her medical bay to wounded Accord soldiers. The human doctors had been treating aliens for 3 days straight without rest. Aura visited to thank them. What she saw there changed her understanding of humans forever. A young nurse named Danny Reeves was treating a wounded soldier. The soldier had lost 2 of his arms in the battle. He was in great pain, crying out in his own language. Danny did not understand the words, but he understood the suffering. Hey, it's okay," Danny said softly. "I know it hurts. We're going to fix you up, I promise. Just hold on a little longer." The soldier could not understand the words either, but something in Danny's voice calmed him. The nurse's hands were steady and gentle as he cleaned the wounds and applied medicine. He had been working for 18 hours without sleep. His eyes were red. His hands should have been shaking from exhaustion, but they were not. "Why do you not rest?" Aura asked him. Danny looked up, surprised by the question. "People need help. I can rest later." It was such a simple answer, such an obvious thing to say, yet Aura had never heard anything like it. Her own people would have demanded rest breaks. They would have worked in shifts. They would not have pushed themselves to the point of collapse for strangers. But the humans did, every single one of them. She found more examples wherever she looked. In the fighter bays, human pilots were teaching Accord pilots their tactics, not to gain advantage, not to ask for payment, but simply because it might help. In the engineering sections, human mechanics were sharing their technology freely, showing alien engineers how to build better shields and weapons. And on the ground, the stories were even more incredible. Sergeant Cole was a Marine. He led a squad of 12 soldiers, all human. When reports came of trapped civilians on a colony moon, he volunteered to rescue them. The mission was supposed to take 6 hours. It took 3 days. The swarm had left behind ground forces, horrible creatures that crawled and bit and killed, and his squad fought through them without rest, without resupply, with nothing but the weapons they carried and their own stubborn will. When they finally reached the trapped civilians, they found 47 children hiding in a collapsed building. The children were terrified. They had never seen humans before. They had only heard the scary stories. But knelt down and smiled at them. "It's okay," he said. "We're going to take you somewhere safe." One of the children, braver than the others, reached out and touched his face. "Are you a monster?" Laughed. It was a tired laugh, but a real one. "No, little one, I'm just a soldier, and I'm here to help." The extraction was difficult. Swarm forces attacked 3 more times, was hit by enemy fire twice. Plasma burns covered his back, wounds that would have killed most species, but he kept fighting. He carried 2 wounded children in his arms the entire way back to the transport ship. When they finally reached safety, the leader asked why he had done it, why he had risked his life for children of a species he had never met. Seemed confused by the question. They needed help. What else was I supposed to do? Admiral Aura met with Commander Tors to discuss what she had seen. They sat in his quarters, a simple room with few decorations. Tors listened as she described her observations. "I do not understand your species," she admitted. "You push yourselves beyond all reasonable limits. You sacrifice yourselves for strangers. You show kindness to those who fear you. Why?" Tors thought for a long moment. "That's a big question." "I have time." Tors leaned back in his chair. "We come from a hard world. Everything on Earth wants to kill us. The weather, the animals, even the ground beneath our feet. Earthquakes, floods, fires, diseases. Our planet tried to destroy us every day of our existence. That is what the stories say, a death world. Yes, and on a death world you learn something important. You learn that you cannot survive alone. The only way to live is to work together, to help each other, to never leave anyone behind." He smiled slightly. "We had to become kind to survive. Kindness is our greatest weapon." Aura considered this. "But we are not your people. We are strangers, aliens. Why extend that kindness to us?" Tors looked at her with those calm, dark eyes. "Because someone needed to. Isn't that enough?" She had no answer for that. The alliance between humans and the Accord grew stronger, but so did the swarm. They were learning, adapting, preparing for another attack. Reports came in from the outer systems. The enemy was gathering its forces. Something big was coming. Tors studied the reports with his officers. Captain Vance pointed at the tactical display. "They're going to hit us with everything they have. They know we're the threat now. They'll try to take us out first." "Then we'll have to be ready," Tors said. "Can we win?" Tors looked at his crew, at the humans who had followed him across the galaxy to fight in a war that was not theirs, at the men and women who had given everything to help strangers. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But we're going to try. That's what we do. We try, we fight, we never give up." Across the fleet, humans prepared for the battle to come. They checked their weapons. They trained with their new allies. They laughed and joked and told stories because that was how humans dealt with fear. And in the darkness of space, the swarm gathered. Millions upon millions of ships, all aimed at one target. The Death World species that had hurt them. The Terrans who refused to die. The greatest battle of the war was coming, and both sides knew that only one would survive. 6 months had passed since humanity arrived in the galaxy. In that time, everything had changed. The Accord was no longer losing. With human help, they had won battle after battle. The swarm was being pushed back. For the first time in years, there was hope. But hope is a dangerous thing. It makes you forget that the enemy is still out there. It makes you think that victory is certain. The swarm had been watching, learning, waiting for the right moment. That moment had come. The attack happened without warning. The human fleet was stationed near a supply base, preparing for another push into swarm territory. Commander Tors was on the bridge of the Endurance, reviewing battle plans with Captain Vance and Tactical Officer Nate Carson. Then space exploded. The swarm had been hiding their ships in the dead zones between stars, places where sensors could not reach. They had gathered in secret, building up their numbers until they had enough to overwhelm even the humans. Millions of ships appeared all at once. They surrounded the human fleet from every direction. There was no escape. "All ships battle stations," Tors shouted. "Focus fire on the nearest groups. We need to punch a hole." The battle was chaos from the first moment. Human weapons tore through swarm ships by the thousands, but thousands more took their place. The Endurance shook with every hit. Alarms screamed. Systems failed. A swarm suicide ship broke through the defenses. It rammed directly into the Endurance's bridge section. The explosion threw everyone off their feet. Metal screamed. Fires erupted, and Commander Tors fell. He was alive, but barely. A piece of shrapnel had gone through his chest. Blood pooled on the deck beneath him. The medical team rushed to him, but even they could see the truth. He was dying. Lisa, Torres whispered, grabbing Vance's hand. Take command. No, sir, you're going to be fine, just hold on. Torres smiled, it was weak but real. Don't let them win, you hear me? Don't let them win. His eyes closed. The medics rushed him away to surgery. And just like that, Captain Lisa Vance was in command of the entire fleet. She did not have time to be afraid. She did not have time to doubt herself. The swarm was pressing in from all sides, and her people were dying. All ships report in, she ordered. The reports were not good. 12 human ships destroyed, 20 more badly damaged. The Accord vessels were in even worse shape. They were running out of time. Chief Engineer Kelly called from the engine room. His voice was strained. Blood ran down his face from a head wound, but he was still working. Captain, we've got major damage. I can give you engines or weapons. Not both. We don't have the power. Vance looked at the tactical display. The swarm command was at the center of their formation. It was huge, bigger than a city, covered with organic growths and pulsing with dark energy. All the other ships seemed to follow its commands. If they could destroy it, the swarm might fall into chaos. But the command ship was too far away. They could not reach it with weapons fire. The other swarm ships would tear them apart before they got close. Unless they got very close, closer than any weapon needed to be. Kelly, Vance said, give me engines. There was a pause. Ma'am. Engines, full power, everything you've got. Captain, without weapons, we can't defend ourselves. What are you planning? Vance took a deep breath. We're going to ram it. The bridge went silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. The Endurance would not survive. Neither would anyone still on board. All hands, Vance announced over the ship's speakers. This is Captain Vance. I'm not going to lie to you. We're in a bad spot. The commander is down. We're surrounded. And I'm about to do something crazy. She paused. I'm going to fly this ship straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. We're going to hit their command ship. And when we do, we're going to detonate the reactor core. The explosion will take out everything within 100 kilometers. Another pause. Escape pods will launch at the last moment. Some of us will make it, some won't. I'm not ordering anyone to stay. If you want to get to the pods now, go. No one will blame you. No one moved. Nate Carson spoke up from his station. Ma'am, with respect, I've got nowhere better to be. Other voices joined in. Every member of the crew choosing to stay, choosing to fight. Vance felt something swell in her chest. Pride, love, gratitude for serving with such people. All right then, she said. Let's show these bugs what humans are made of. The Endurance accelerated. Its engines burned brighter than they ever had before, pushing the massive ship forward at incredible speed. Swarm vessels tried to stop it. They threw themselves in the way. They fired everything they had, but the Endurance would not stop. Across the battlefield, every ship watched. Accord and Swarm alike saw the human carrier charging toward the enemy command ship. It was damaged, it was burning, it was dying. But it would not stop. The Endurance hit the Swarm lines like a hammer. It crushed smaller ships just by flying through them. It took hits that would have destroyed any other vessel, and still it kept going. 30 seconds to impact, someone shouted. Launch escape pods, Vance ordered. The sides of the Endurance opened. Hundreds of small pods shot out into space, carrying whoever could reach them. Vance stayed on the bridge. So did Kelly, still in engineering. So did dozens of others who chose to see this through. The command tried to move. It was too slow. The Endurance slammed into it at full speed, burying itself deep into the organic flesh of the enemy vessel. Vance looked out the viewport. She could see the inside of the creature. Massive chambers filled with creatures that controlled the swarm, the brain of the entire enemy fleet. Goodbye, she said softly. The reactor detonated. The explosion was like a new sun being born. Light and fire erupted outward, destroying everything they touched. The command was vaporized instantly. 100,000 swarm vessels were caught in the blast, torn apart by the force. And when the light faded, the swarm was in chaos. Without their command ship, the living vessels could not coordinate. They flew in random directions, crashing into each other, retreating without order. For the first time in their existence, they were afraid. The Accord fleet, shocked but alive, began to fight back. They chased the confused swarm ships. They destroyed them by the thousands. What had been a hopeless battle became a rout. In the debris field, rescue ships searched for survivors. They found escape pods scattered across a wide area. One by one, they pulled them in. Lisa Vance was found floating in her pod, unconscious but alive. The explosion had thrown her clear at the last moment. Kelly was there too, bleeding and burned but smiling. When Vance woke up in a medical bay, she found Admiral Aura standing beside her bed. "You survived," Aura said. There was wonder in her voice. "You flew your ship into the heart of the enemy and you survived." Vance laughed. It hurt, but she laughed anyway. "Torres is going to be so mad I wrecked his ship." "He is alive. The doctors saved him. He will recover." "Good." Vance closed her eyes. Then it was worth it. Outside the medical bay, the galaxy celebrated. The swarm had been broken. For the first time in years, the future looked bright. And everyone knew who to thank. The humans, the Terrans, the Death World species who had taught the galaxy that victory was not about winning. Victory was about never giving up. The war lasted 2 more years after the destruction of the Swarm command ship. It was not easy. The enemy was wounded, but not dead. They still had millions of ships scattered across hundreds of systems. They still wanted to consume everything in their path. But something had changed. The swarm no longer seemed unstoppable. The galaxy had seen them break and run. They had seen fear in creatures that were supposed to feel nothing, and they had seen what caused that fear. Humans. Commander Torres recovered from his wounds. It took 3 months, but he was back on his feet, ready to fight again. Captain Vance was given her own ship, a new carrier named the Resolution. Together with Admiral Aura and the combined fleets of 42 species, they hunted the swarm across the galaxy. Every battle taught them something new. The humans shared everything they knew, their tactics, their technology, their strange, stubborn way of seeing the world, and the Accord learned. They became stronger, they became braver. They became more human. Sergeant Cole led ground campaigns on a dozen worlds. He trained Accord soldiers to fight the way humans fought, not with fancy weapons or superior numbers, but with will, with determination, with the absolute refusal to accept defeat. "The swarm wants you to give up," he told his students. "They want you to lie down and die. Don't give them that. Fight. Keep fighting. Make them work for every inch. Make them pay for every life they take. And never ever stop." Dr. Sophie Grant set up medical stations on liberated worlds. She taught alien doctors human medicine. More importantly, she taught them human kindness. The small acts that could save a life. The gentle words that could ease suffering. The power of just being there when someone needed you. "Everyone deserves care," she said. "It doesn't matter what species they are. It doesn't matter what they look like. Pain is pain. Fear is fear. And everyone deserves someone who cares." Danny Reeves stayed at her side through it all. The young nurse who had worked 18 hours without rest became a legend in his own right. Soldiers from 100 worlds knew his name. They called him the gentle Terran, the human who healed without asking for anything in return. The final battle came above the swarm. No one had known where the creatures came from, but years of war had finally revealed their secret. Deep in unexplored space, there was a dying star orbited by a massive planet covered in organic matter. This was Prime. This was where the swarm was born. The combined fleet gathered for the last fight. 2,000 human warships, 10,000 Accord vessels, and billions of soldiers, pilots, and crew members who had spent years preparing for this moment. Tor stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the carrier Unity. It was the biggest ship ever built, created through the combined work of humans and dozens of alien species, a symbol of what they had become together. Vance was there, Kelly was there, Carson, Cole, Grant, Reeves, all the humans who had become heroes across the galaxy, and beside them stood their Accord friends, Aura, countless others who had fought and bled alongside humanity. "This is it," Tor said. 2 years of war, millions of lives lost, everything has led to this moment. He looked at the planet below. The swarm was gathered around it, their last fleet, their final defense. They would fight to the death because they knew no other way. "I know we're all tired," Tors continued. "I know we've given everything we have, but I need you to give a little more, one more push, one more fight, and then it's over. Then we can rest." Across the fleet, voices answered him, human and alien alike. They cheered, they roared, they made sounds that their translators could not capture but their hearts understood. They were ready. The battle lasted 3 days. It was the largest fight in galactic history. Ships died by the thousands on both sides. The sky burned with weapons fire so thick that it looked like a solid wall of light. But slowly, steadily, the combined fleet pushed forward. They broke through the swarm lines, they reached the planet, and they ended it. When the last swarm fell, there was silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. They just stared at the sky, at the debris, at the world that had spawned so much horror. Then someone cheered, and someone else, and soon the entire fleet was celebrating, crying, laughing, hugging each other across species lines that no longer seemed to matter. They had won. They had actually won. The memorial ceremony was held on, where the war had almost ended before humanity arrived. Every species sent representatives. Millions watched on screens across the galaxy as the leaders gathered to honor the fallen. Tor stood at the front, along with Vance and the other human commanders. Beside them stood Aura, who had become a close friend over the years of war. She was the one who spoke first. 2 years ago, I did not believe in legends," she said. "I thought the stories of the Terrans were myths, tales to frighten children. I was wrong." She turned to look at the humans. "They came when we called, they bled beside us, they died for us. Not because they had to, not because we paid them, but because someone needed help, and that, they told us, was enough." Aura's voice grew stronger. "They taught us something important. They taught us that strength is not just about weapons or numbers. It is about the choice to stand for others, the choice to keep fighting when all hope seems lost, the choice to be kind even when the universe is cruel." She faced the crowd again. "The old stories were wrong. The Terrans are not monsters from a death world. They are the best of what life can be. They are proof that kindness and courage can exist together. That being gentle does not mean being weak. That being strong does not mean being cruel." Tor stepped forward. He had never been comfortable with speeches, but he knew he had to say something. "We didn't come here to be heroes," he said. "We came because you needed help. That's what neighbors do. That's what friends do. That's what family does." He looked at the mixed crowd of humans and aliens. "When we left Earth, we didn't know what we would find. We hoped for the best. We prepared for the worst. What we found was something we never expected." He smiled. "We found you, all of you, species from across the galaxy who became our partners, our friends, our family. The war is over, but what we built together is just beginning." In the years that followed, humanity took its place among the stars. They were no longer hiding, no longer myths. They were full members of the galactic community, respected and loved by species across known space. The old stories were still told, but they were different now. The Terrans were no longer monsters in those tales. They were something else, something better. They were the species that came when you called, the species that never gave up, the species that fought for strangers as fiercely as they fought for family. And when young aliens asked their parents why the Terrans were so special, the parents would smile and say the same thing. Because they showed up. When the whole galaxy was dying, when there was no hope left, when everyone had given up, the humans showed up. They fought beside us. They bled for us. They taught us how to be brave. The parents would hold their children close. And they taught us the most important lesson of all, that no matter how dark things get, you never stop fighting. You never stop hopping. You never stop caring for each other. The children would nod, not fully understanding, but someday they would. Someday they would grow up and face their own battles, and when things seemed impossible, they would remember the humans. They would remember the Death World species who had saved the galaxy. And they would keep fighting. Because that was what the humans had taught them. That was the legacy of Earth. Never give up, never surrender, never stop being kind. And always, always show up to fight.